This conference will now be recorded.
Right. These are the components we have seen. I'm unable to hear. Please put mute from your end. If anybody, any question, we can also have it in the end of the session. Okay. Right. Some of the attributes, some of the attributes we have seen in the components. We have a show header, sidebar, rendered, read only, renderers.
Sir, I'm not visiting the screens.
I don't think so. Maybe for you it's happening. Please log in back again, log out, log in back. I hope others are able to see my screen, right?
Okay, sir, I will log in again.
Yeah, log off, log in back again quickly.
Okay.
Renderers. Okay, right. And content type. There are few more attributes here. Standard controller. So this can be taken when we discuss about standard controller and controller. There are two more attributes. Standard controller and controller. This is to refer the inbuilt controller, right? In the beginning of the sessions, we discussed how the application is, what is the user interface architecture based on which the classic applications are built. MVC architecture, right? Your view and model is your database, and we have a controller, inbuilt controller, which takes care of get this information and process into the database. So controller is communicating between your view and database, right? So that type of controller you can refer in an attribute called standard controller attribute to refer the inbuilt controller. So what about controller? It is your Apex class. Okay, so you can associate a page with the Apex class. So this we'll see it in the next week how to right, we have to associate a page with the inbuilt controller. I can recreate similar type of page. I can bring this standard save functionality to my Visualforce page. I can bring this standard cancel functionality to my Visualforce page by referring inbuilt controller, standard controller. Okay, and we can write our own business logic by using Apex class. Yes, extension also is going to be a topic. Extensions is again an Apex class we're going to use, but to extend the functionality of your standard controller, to override this functionality. When I click on save button, what happens? The record is inserted into the database. But before it inserts, I need to check duplicate. Before it inserts, I need to do some some other process, some other logic needs to be executed. Then instead of the standard functionality, I would like to add my own functionality. In addition to the standard functionality, we'll go for extensions. Okay, so these things you will learn. We'll learn at the time when we discuss about that particular topic. Right. So we have attributes here: title, am I right? A direction attribute, rendered. Some of the important attributes. We have style attributes, render attribute. There's important attributes. Okay. And page block buttons. We have location. We have location and direction attribute. Of course, rendered is there in every component, and ID we have in every component. Got me? ID to identify the component uniquely. Command button, value to give the label, action to refer the Apex method or any URL you can refer. Got me? And the style attributes, we have disable attributes, rendered. Okay, so these are some of the important attributes in your command button. And command link, it's also an action component. We have value and action mainly, similar to that, but the button in the form of link, action in the form of link, action in the form of button. Right, we'll move on to the next component, Apex : page block section. The component is Apex : page block section. Right, by seeing this you'll come to know what is this. It should be a child, of page block. Apex page block section, the first thing, it is a child of page block. So what is the purpose? It divides a row. It divides a row into columns. By default, it divides the row into two columns. By default, it divides a row into two columns. I put it as a third point. But we can specify how many columns we can divide by using different attributes in this component. We have some attributes in this component using which we can divide the row into respective number of column. Okay, right. So we'll see the demo. So what type of component? For example, I have a page block. I have a page block section inside. So I close this. Okay. First thing, it will include a section inside the block. And this is, it divides a row into columns, right? So it means it's going to place the child component into respective columns. Okay, it's going to place the child component into respective column. Let's go to the paintbrush and explain the things. We will try to concentrate here. So I have this Visual Force tags. Okay, I have some component here, apex colon output label. This is a component. This is a component to include a label. That's it. This is a component to include a label. Okay. Just have a quick overview of this component. Just have a quick overview of this component. Let's see. Output label. I use this component. There is an attribute called value name. Just we give the label here. Okay. The output label is to just display the label. And there is another component called input text. This will include a text box. It just will bring the text box. So the text box, when you enter the data for any record, you need a data entry text box, right? Similar to that, you can bring a text box using input text, right? Hope you remember, any input component we used, what should include? Form. The input text is a kind of input component, right? It's a kind of input component. See here what happens. Preview. I get a box here. I get a box here. Got me? Right. So that's a quick introduction about output label input text. We'll see more elaborated session. All the attributes of important attributes of input text we'll see in another session. Okay, right. So these are two components you see. One is to display the label, and another is to include a text box. Why we include a form component now? Because this is an input component, so we use form component. Okay. Now we are going to use these two component inside your pageBlockSection and see what is the use of pageBlockSection. People able to follow this? Got me? Right. I have two components here. So what's the use of your pageBlockSection? The pageBlockSection divides the row into columns. The pageBlockSection divides the row into columns. Right. So I have a page like this. So let's go to the Visual Force page. pageBlockSection, because it should be a child, right? Should be a child. Just a block is added. We don't have any content for the pageBlockSection. We said like it's divide a row into different columns, but I don't have any content to place in the column, right? So let's put some content here. Output label. People are able to follow this, right? Input text. So why are we giving issue? Because it's you need to include form, because we are using input component. I think people are able to understand this, right? So just preview, right? You see here, the row is divided into two columns. Right, this is what it happens, right? So basically, this is the one we used. This is the one we used. Okay, I'm getting output like this. For this one, I get the output like this. So it divides the row into two columns. See here, a row is divided. That's a divider line I put. So these are one column, column one. People are able to follow this, column one. And I have another column here, column two. So it divides the row into two columns. The entire row is divided into two columns, and it plays the one component. One component is basically, what is the first component? Output label. The output label is placed here, and input text is placed here. So one component goes to the first column and other component goes to the second column. But you are seeing a blank space here, right? You're seeing a blank space here. The reason, a column consists of two cells. Cell 1, cell 2. Again, we have a column consists of two cells. Cell 1, cell 2. Right? So the component is placed in first column, but a column consists of two cells. The first cell is occupied by the component. The other cell is a blank. The cell 2 is blank now. And similarly, the input text is placed here. What about the cell 2 of the column 2? The cell 2 of column 2 is blank now. So we are seeing a blank space here. Okay. But what is the purpose of your page block section? It divides a row into two columns and it plays a child component. What is a child component? Is a child 1, and your input text is a child 2. Your input text is a child 2, our output label is a child 1. So child 1 placed here and child 2 is placed here. People are clear with this? Able to follow this? People are clear with this? It's clear to all of you, right? A page block section, it divides a row into two columns, and a column consists of two cells. A column contains two cells. Okay, and a component will be placed in one column. A component will be placed in one column, right? We do not have we have only a one cell will automatically takes a component, other cell is blank. Got me? We'll see this how to avoid this a blank space to bring this input text box that needs another component that will be discussed next to this. First, let's discuss about how the page block section works for you. Okay, right? So by default, it divides a row into two column. Let me add one more component now and see what happens. You can divide n number of rows, Vijay, but how many rows, how many columns you would like to accommodate in a screen so that it will be helpful for user to enter data? That makes, right, that's where your restriction is there. See, I just repeat one more label here. See what happens. See what happens. A row is divided into two, right? The first column, one component goes. A second column, text box goes. And again, automatically, the third one come here. If anything you enter, that will go to the next column. Got me? Suppose I put again label here. What will happen? So this is going to be in a first column in a row, first row, second column in a first row, right? And first column in a second row, again second column in a third row. See what happens? Like this. Okay, and text box come here. Got me? So people are able to follow this. So now I have a 6 components. So these two will be placed in first row. These two will be placed in second row. These two will be placed in third row. I save this, refreshed. Got me? Right. So just to add a description for you. The page block section demo, right? Just to add a description for you. Divide the row into two columns by default. Let's go with a different one. Okay. I'm going to use an attribute called column attribute. I'm going to use an attribute called column attributes, which says how many number of columns should I divide? How many number of columns a row can be divided? That's being specified by the attribute called a column attribute in the page block section. A column attribute in the page block section. Okay, right. By default, it is 2. I'm making it as 1. We'll reduce the number of content so that we can see the examples properly. I given a column as 1. Saving. Okay, right. Go here. So what happens here? Now a row is just occupied by one component. A row is not divided into two columns, right? Now it's only one component, only one column. We have one column in the row. That's it. So a component is here. A component consists of two cells. Another cell is blank. A text box here, cell blank, like that. It's a one column arrangement. People are able to follow this? It's a one column arrangement.
So since you set as 1, it's displaying the text box in the same column, right?
Exactly. A component is placed in one column. That's it. A row is having just one column now. Okay, it is like a, people are able to follow this, right? See, it's like a, if you go to the table. So what is this? This is a one column, right? It's a one column. It's a two column. Got me? So anything you put is just going to be in. You add row, it's a one column, but I have 5 rows. That's it. Similar way, it's a one column. Okay, right. So column attribute. I'm make it as 4. I make it as 4. Here I make it as 1. Now I make it as 4. A 4 column layout. Scroll down. So it's 4 column now. Okay. This one. People do not confuse. I'll explain here. 4. Okay. So last one is 4 column. I given the title like that. Okay. You'll see the title accordingly. Right. This is a 1 column. And this is a 4 column. So I have got me right. Still is a blank because a cell has a 2 cell, right? A column contains 2 cell. Another cell is blank. Got me? People able to follow this? Right. Just have a quick overview of the attributes. And the page block section has title as well. To give a title for the section wise, I can also give a title. Okay, a block and inside which we have section, right? You can also have a title inside the for your section.
Can we change a default image which appearing on the title as a home?
Let me complete 1 minute. What is your question? Title.
Some image is appearing, right? Can we modify that image, the default one?
I'll explain now. Hold on. I'll explain. We can modify. Title attribute to add a title for the section. To add a title for the section. Scroll down. A title is added. It's not properly because of the styling of the home tab, because we inherit the style from the home. The home color is applied to the your section, so the font is not properly visible. Okay, right. Let's apply a different style for this block. How to apply a different style for this block? We have a tab style. Okay, so let's go to the any darkest color we have, that style will apply the contacts. So how to apply a style for the block? Inheriting a tab style from another object, just give the object name here, right? We discussed. So only this block you'll see will be in the style of your contact tab. Just a look and feel we are adding. Go here, scroll down. You're able to see the title now. People are able to see the title now. So a style is inherited. A style is inherited from the tab style attribute. Got me? People have to follow this. Okay, right. So next thing, yeah. See, when the section is when you give the title for the section, you can see the section is expandable and collapsible. When you add a title, automatically a property is included where I can collapse the section, expand the section. People able to follow this? a title is added, so automatically you got a section as a collapsible and expandable. Okay.
Ranjit, if you set a column as 1, the label and the text value was coming under in the same column. Now, if you set it as 2, can you define what is happening, like for the enter name and the a text field that you are about to so that's coming in 2 columns, you mean?
Yes, ma. It's so clear, right? See, 2 columns, a component in 1 column, a component in next column, a component in 1 column, a component in next column, right? First row,
Okay.
second row. That's it.
Okay.
Okay. See, the title is given, then it becomes a expandable and collapsible, and also title is also appearing. And how to make the section non-expandable? I do not want the section to be collapsible. There is an attribute called collapsible attribute. By default, it is true, making it as false. By default, it's true, we're making it as false. So that's right. A drop-down collapsible option is no more for this section. People able to understand this? It's a Boolean value, true by default, and if false, the section cannot be collapsible one. Yes, you cannot collapse your section. Right. You will follow this, all of you. So this is your page block section. So page block section divides the row into 2 different columns by default, and the component will be placed in respective columns. Right. Okay. Let's move on to different story now. How the Salesforce objects can be referred in your Visual Force page. Okay, so this is a topic you're going to see now. Before this, let us understand what is S object. So there is a term, we'll use it in Salesforce programming part called S object. The term you'll use it in your programming part of your Salesforce called S object. S object is nothing but any object referred in API. It means your program. Any objects, Salesforce object referred in your API, as S object. Okay, so it can be a standard or custom. How do you refer that? S object. So S object you refer the object, Salesforce object in your program as S object only. It can be a standard or custom. It can be a standard or custom object. Okay, how we are going to refer this object? We are going to refer this object by in this format, open and close braces, exclamatory, standard controller name dot field name. Okay, right. See, I started using braces exclamatory and close brace exclamatory. Got me? I started using the format. You might have seen in your admin pod email template creation the merge field, right? Merge field has this format. It means whatever things you are referring inside this format, open braces, exclamatory, close braces, that will be dynamically replaced with value. That will be dynamically replaced during runtime. Okay. See, in your Visualforce page, anything you hard coded, that will be as it is displayed, right? Let's have some quick basic a property of the Visualforce page. So what happens? This one, how will it display? It will display as it is. Got me? I'm just going to use the format what we discussed. So this format is nothing but expression format. This format is nothing but expression format. Open braces, exclamatory, and some content in between this, close braces. So this format is called expression. So the content will be resolved dynamically during runtime. Okay, right. Let's go here. I put some string here. The string, in Apex environment, you'll use single quotes, right? Similarly, we are using single quotes here. I put some text here. Save it. The value is resolved. The value is resolved. The value is resolved, and I get the output. I add one breakline character, age. So I'm going to put a number here. So number I don't put in a single quotes. I get 10. So, right, we don't see much difference here because it's a hard-coded value, and this value automatically resolved, and only I get the output. Similarly, the number. Suppose I like to add some numbers here. I put plus and add. So what happens here? It means what? It means what? Anything you give within these braces, that being resolved dynamically during runtime, that being resolved. Suppose I put some number 10 plus 20. So what will happen now? This number will be displayed as it is. This is not resolved. But anything you give within the format, expression format, that being resolved, Okay, so that's actually is also called binding the data. Expression or a binding format. Binding the data. So we bind the data, and automatically what happens during runtime, the content will be resolved. That parameter will be resolved. That value will be resolved. So what happens in your email template? In your email template, we call it as merge fields. People are familiar with the email template, right? Suppose I would like to dynamically point a person, right? And some content you will have in the email template. So what happens? This value, according to the record value, this value will be replaced. So what format you used? Merge format, nothing but expression, right? So the similar format you will use in your Visualforce page to refer the value dynamically. Okay. And some more basics of Visual Force page. How to add a comment inside the Visual Force page. The comment. Okay. In Visual Force page, there is no single line comment or multiple line comments. There is no difference between single line comment or multiple line comment. Every comment you need to start with open angle bracket, exclamatory, double hyphen, closed by double hyphen, closed angle bracket. So anything between these you give here, it is going to be a comment. Basics of. If you like to add a multiple lines comment, start here. Close here. People follow this? Comment line 1, comment line 2, comment line 3. So these lines will not be rendered in your page, right? Because it's a commented line. That is not rendered. So comments can be given by open the angle bracket, exclamation double hyphen, and close with double hyphen angle bracket. People are able to follow this. Okay, so this is some basics of your Visual Force page. Some basics of your Visual Force page. So we can resolve the content by referring the content within the format called open and exclamatory and close braces, right? Okay, let's move on to the S object. So the S object, the self force object, how we are going to refer? We know like a page can be associated with an inbuilt controller. A page can be associated with an inbuilt controller by using the attribute called a standard controller. Let's have an introduction about what is standard controller first. Then only we can able to understand how I can refer the self force object. One format of referring self force object is using standard controller. So what is standard controller? We'll see first. So standard controller, it is an inbuilt controller. So what is controller? In MEC architecture, we have a view, a controller, and we have a model. So controller takes a responsibility of communicating between your view and model. So this is your, say for example, this is my page layout, and this is a controller part. So how the page layout, through page layout we are communicating with the database? How the page layout, through page layout we are communicating with the database? Through the standard controller. It is, the controller is provided by Salesforce. They return the controller already, right? They return the controller to process your data entered in the page layout. To process the data entered in the page layout, the controller is already been returned, right? We cannot access this, we cannot see this controller within your platform declaratively, but that's an inbuilt controller which takes care of get this data, whatever entered by the user, and save it into the database when a user click on a save button. Okay, and this is your object. So it is an inbuilt controller provided by Salesforce for every standard and custom object. People are able to follow this? It's an inbuilt controller provided by Salesforce for every standard and custom objects. Got me? Right. What is the use of this controller? It does the standard functionalities like a save, cancel, right, and delete. It does all the standard functionalities, right? Got me? The same standard controller you can refer it in your Visual Force page. How we are going to refer? We are going to refer Apex page. I said we have an attribute called standard attribute to refer the inbuilt controller. People are able to follow this. So I'm going to use standard controller attribute. So here you can refer the standard controller attribute. You're going to refer name of the standard controller, right? So what is the name? What is the name I can give here? What is the name I can give here? The name of the controller. How we are going to define, give the how to come to know the name of the controller. Suppose I need to get the name of the standard controller belongs to account object. Which standard controller takes care of this data and insert in the database. So that standard controller, I would like to bring it in my Visual Force page. Okay, right. So how to associate, right? Let's see the naming convention. Suppose I need to create a VF page of standard controller belongs to account object. I'm going to bring this standard controller. How we are going to refer this? See how I'm going to refer account. Okay, a VF page of contact object. What VF page? Standard controller VF page. Contact. Okay, a VF page of a custom object called department. I'm going to refer API name. For every custom and standard objects, we have a standard controller, right? See, I have a standard object, any object. See, if go to the ABCs, ABC is a kind of object. It's also have a standard controller, VF of ABC object. How we are going to refer that standard controller? ABC underscore C. So it denotes the name of the standard controller. It is in the name of object. The name of the standard controller, it is in the name of object. People are able to follow this? So what is the naming convention of a standard controller? It is in the name of object. It is in the name of object for standard objects. Example, the standard controller account, a standard controller contact. People are able to follow this. Okay. And what about your custom object? It is in the API name for custom objects. It is in the API name of custom objects. For example, I have a object loan _C. I have object payment _C. People are good with this? People are good with this example? So your standard controller is basically an inbuilt controller, an inbuilt business logic written by the Salesforce to support a declarative standard functionality like inserting a row, deleting a row, editing an object record, right? So they have inbuilt controller called standard controller. We are not going to write any logic here, right? We are just going to refer the standard controller in your page by using which attribute? Standard controller attribute. How I can refer the respective object controller? I can refer by the name of the object. For your custom object, you are going to refer with _C. People are able to follow this? That's a naming convention. Any question on standard controller? All of you, any question on standard controller before I just give one more information? Any question? People are clear with this? Okay, ma. Right. So you know how to refer the standard controller now. What is the use of referring your standard controller here? I need to refer the fields from respective object, right? I need to refer the field from respective object. So how I'm going to refer the field? Braces, exclamatory, standard controller name, field name. Braces, exclamatory, standard controller name, field name, right? Your standard controller is the name of object only, right? Your standard controller is the name of object only. So you can also interpret like this: object name dot field name. It's a better way of understanding the naming convention, right? Object name dot field name. But object name is nothing but what? Standard controller name. The standard controller name only I pointing like this. Either way is right. How do you understand? How do you understand but what is the name we are referring here? The standard controller name. The standard controller name in the name of object only. So how we are going to refer the field? Braces, exclamatory, object name dot field name. Okay, right. See here. How to refer the S object fields. S object nothing but Salesforce objects in your program environment. Got me? So I have a object, I have a field. I have object, I have a field. For example, I have object account, I have field name. So how we are going to refer this? How we are going to refer this? We are going to refer account dot name. People are able to follow this? Account dot name. I have object here, industry. How are you going to refer this? Exclamatory account dot industry, right? So I have a object, I have a custom field. Custom field is double underscore C, right? So how do you refer? Account dot active double underscore C, right ma? I have object loan, right? I have a name field here, loan underscore C dot name. Name is a standard field, so we are going with the without double underscore C. The type of the loan. It can be any field. It can be pick list field or currency field. That does matter. That doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Okay. You just refer this in this format only. In this format. Open braces, exclamatory, object name, field name. People are good with this? Okay. Right. So pageBlockSection and standard controller. So let's create one quick page before I wind up this session. Account standard page 1, right? So standard controller account. So this now page is associated with a standard controller called account. A page is now associated with a standard controller called account. I don't add any content, just a page. You don't see anything at all, right? We are not including anything, right? So how we are going to refer the field here? Say I would like to refer account name dot name. Similarly, we are going to refer other fields. We have phone field. People are able to follow this? People are able to follow this? Account dot industry account dot, there is a custom field, right? Active, like this, and save. Double underscore. Right, listen here. I'm not seeing any output. Why? Because I just refer the field, but I'm not passing any value to this field. Right? For which record? By which record I need to render this data? For which record I need to render the name, phone, and industry? Okay, we know how to refer the field, but for which record I am going to refer this value? Name, phone, industry, active, for which record? That is not pointed here, right? Okay, let's go to some basics. See, I'm going to the standard account. I go to some account record. Okay, so what I'm seeing now, what details I'm seeing now? I'm seeing the details of record ID at the URL. I'm seeing the details of what are the record ID I'm pointing at the URL. Suppose I need to see the details of lead record referred by this record ID. This record ID of this lead record, right? Okay. Now I am seeing the account record here. I just replace the account record ID with the lead record and enter. Automatically, my corresponding lead record is displayed. Got me? So depends upon the record ID at the URL, I get the data. So that's the standard behavior of your standard controller. How the data is being displayed here? We know, like, there is an inbuilt controller called standard controller in the name of object, which takes the ID from the URL and query the database and display the corresponding data here. So it's a standard behavior of your standard controller. Whatever ID you are passing at the URL, it takes the ID and display that data, corresponding data. Got me? So what we did here, what we did in our developer console, we created a standard controller page for account. So how can I run this? When the data will be displayed? When I pass ID in the URL, this page will display corresponding data in the page. Right? When I load this, when I execute this page, I'm not seeing any data. But when I will see the data, when I pass the corresponding ID in the URL, for that ID, the standard controller will give the data. Why I need to pass the ID in the URL? That's how the standard controller is working for you. The standard controller is how it is working. We pass ID and corresponding data is rendered. Similarly, the page is nothing but a similar standard controller page for account object. So you pass ID at the URL, the standard controller will display the data. So how we are going to execute this page now? We need to pass for which ID I need to render this data. For which account I need to render this data. Right? Let's go to the corresponding page. Instance name, apex, page name. Just remove this because this text is added because of you preview the page from developer console, right? Okay. So this is my actual page. No content is displayed. But how the standard controller will behave? You need to pass ID at the URL, right? So how we are going to pass ID? If it is a standard page, you pass next to the slash. But how we are going to do it in your custom Visualforce page? Question mark. What field, to which field you are going to pass value? ID field. Question mark next to the page. The field name equal to ID. So whatever ID I copied. How I'm going to pass a parameter in the URL? Question mark, the field name equal to value. Okay, so every record ID field of object, the field name is nothing but ID. The field name is nothing but ID. So ID equal to, you pass the respective ID and hit enter. Now the page is rendered. Now the page is displayed the name. What happened to the phone industry? We don't have value, so this is not displayed. You take another example, another record ID. Okay, we take another ID where we have a phone number and more details. Okay, take this record ID, go to our page, replace this with particular record ID. I get the data, name, phone number, industry. The data is not formatted. I just add a break line character. People are good with this.
Sir,
Yes.
if if Apex page has one more attribute like ID equals to, so it won't work here. Apex page tag, if we put ID equals to the ID number,
No, that
can't
is
we use
different,
it?
ma. That is for the component ID. That don't confuse with that. That's an attribute of the component.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I request do not confuse with that ID. It's that's for the component, to identify the component. You will see the real use case of that component things later. I mean ID thing. Okay, this ID we are referring is a, don't confuse with the other part. This just I'm referring the ID field of the object. So we are passing ID. So what field you are going to pass, that ID or to that value or to refer here. Suppose, see for example, suppose I am passing to this page, I am going to pass the industry value. Then the field name, what parameter you are going to pass? That parameter name value. There is a format of passing parameter in the URL. Okay, we'll discuss about passing parameter in the URL more detail later. Okay, now I'm just giving you information how the standard controller page can be executed. How the standard controller page can be executed. The standard controller page will be executed for can be executed for a ID, for a particular record ID, because in your standard page every record of your standard controller will only execute for a record ID at the URL. It has an inbuilt functionality to take the record ID from the URL and gives a corresponding data. Any record you go, right? I go to edit. The record ID is there. Which record you would like to edit? Tell me which record I would like to edit. So based on the record ID, the data is rendered. So that's the reason to execute this page, we need to pass a corresponding record at the URL. But remember, this is not the use case where you need to pass manually the ID at the URL. Okay, the implementation is going to be different. The implementation will work in different other way. We are not going to pass like this URL ID at the URL manually. Okay, instead we can make it automatically take the ID from the URL while we implement it in real time. Okay, that real time implementation we'll see later. We are just seeing the demo how to execute the page, standard controller page. You need to pass a respective ID at the URL. Okay, so with this we'll close the session today. People are able to follow this. We are going to discuss more about standard controller in the next session.
Ranjit, I have one quick question.
Go ahead, please.
You shown that tab style is equal to account, right? So that color has changed, right? So consider that I choose that tab style equal to account, and later somebody has modified that tab color. So automatic it will reflect, or I need to do some refresh kind of thing.
See, the standard tab style you cannot modify. People should understand that standard tab style, whatever provided by Salesforce, it's going to be inbuilt style. Only for a custom object style only you can modify. Okay, you can change the tab style, then that accordingly the style will be modified, not for the standard object.
All right, thank you. And Rajit, one more thing.
Sir?
Is there any that
1 minute, Ahmed. Other people question?
Sir, is there any other way to give the color to the style, like background color, anything?
Yeah, we have
It is the
CSS
only way
and
to
all.
give the style?
No, ma. We have CSS attributes and those things we will use. Okay, that can be incorporated. That can be incorporated, customizing the page with the CSS. That's the reason they provided to more look and feel apart from standard look and feel. We have a facility to include CSS also. So no limit. Yeah, no limits for it. Okay, even you can use directly the HTML tags. You can render your page in different look and feel also, right?
When is the
Okay,
next
so
Tuesday?
Yeah, see, we are going to have a class on next class on Tuesday, my Tuesday, coming week. Okay, no class on Monday. We have skipped the class on Monday. That's the reason we have a class today. We're going to skip the class on Monday. Okay, and so try to refer the examples on the same day itself, so that you will be in sync with me. And happy Diwali to all of you. Take care.
you too, happy Diwali.
Happy Diwali, ma. Take care. Bye bye. I'll
See you,
assign the
sir.
notes in the chat there.
Ranjit.